Welcome to Synchrony, building a conscious connection to your intuition. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how we process our intuition. Let's talk about what I call our intuitive processors. If you're watching this, you have already established that you're intuitive, or maybe you're just a little bit curious about intuition and how it can play a part in your life. So how can we get better at recognizing our intuition and then deciphering it? So I'm going to back up a little bit and start at the beginning. Each of us receives our intuition or our inner wisdom through what I call our intuitive sense. In another video, I talked about the 19 intuitive sense facets and how we can use them to access our intuition. I talked about the 5 primary intuitive senses, which are our 5 primary senses: sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. And then I shared a couple of examples of the other 14 secondary senses. So how do we take what we learned from these 19 facets and process them? What do we do with this information? We process them through our learning styles. I use Howard Gardner's learning styles, or what he calls our intelligences. So there are 8 learning styles. And in my trainings, I call them intuitive processors because they really are intuitive processors. They help us to decipher what we're receiving intuitively. Each of us uses at least several of them. With practice, we can learn to recognize how to process with all 8. We each have at least one processor that is our primary or dominant one when we decipher and understand our intuition. I'd like to talk about a pair of processors of which we are usually either one or the other, although we can learn to be both. So those processors are called interpersonal and intrapersonal processors. Intrapersonal processing happens when you're alone, when you're by yourself. You recognize intuitive cues and decipher them more easily when you're alone. So for me, that means that I might be journaling about a dream or something that happened that day, and I'm more easily able to decipher it because I don't have any of that external noise going on. There's not a lot of externals happening. And I more easily gain clarity through time alone. An interpersonal processor recognizes or deciphers their intuition while with other people. So you might be in a group of people and hear or see intuitive cues and then are able to process what they mean. The cue might be about the person that you're talking to, or it can be about you. Something that they said triggered a knowing that you were able to process. Now, just because you lean towards one of these processors and not the other doesn't mean that you cannot or will not ever become proficient in the other. So if you find it easier to decipher your messages alone, you can learn how to process intuitive information with others through practice. I've said it before and I'll say it again, as with all things intuitive, it just takes practice. Now, I said earlier that I was more of an intrapersonal processor. I find it easier to decipher messages when I am alone. But that doesn't stop me from doing neurosynchrony facilitation sessions or from picking up intuitive cues when I'm with other people. I have learned how to use my interpersonal processor. So when I know that I will be with a group, I will anchor and shield myself, and I consciously open myself to intuitive cues. I'm prepared to listen with the eyes of my intuition for anything that speaks to me. So what I do is add a heightened level of awareness when I am interpersonal. And I have to tell you that over the years, I've become very, very comfortable with my interpersonal processor. Although my failsafe, when I'm confused, I will always go back to the intra to spend time alone to try to sift through what's a distraction and what's actually an intuitive cue. One thing that I do want to say is let's go back to interpersonal processing. That is very different from what I call fishing. And that's when someone consciously and intentionally invades the space of another person to look for intuitive cues, that they are looking to find something in cue intuitively. That's not ethical. And so if you are doing interpersonal processing by gaining information through fishing, I would really strongly encourage you not to do that. That's an invasion of privacy. But if you are an interpersonal processor and you are open to receiving cues and they come to you and you've got a good set of boundaries, then you listen to what your intuition is sharing with you. So again, sometimes when you're out with folks, you're going to gain a lot of information, but you're going to be an information overload. So sometimes when I come home, I get quiet and I wait for missed cues to rise to the surface. And this is perfectly okay. Being intuitive is not about picking up 100% of the cues 100% of the time when they're given to us. We unconsciously pick up intuition with our intuitive sense, and then we begin to process it with our intuitive processor unconsciously. The cues will come back to us in moments when we can really hear what they're saying. And sometimes we have already unconsciously processed them. So that will come, the meaning will come as well. Now, remember, when we move along the intuitive awareness continuum, again, it's not about being 100% accurate 100% of the time. It's about increasing your ability to recognize your intuitive cues, decipher their meaning, understand their purpose, and respond to them. That's what your intuition is about. So I want to thank you for watching this video. If you like it, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. If you've got any questions, let me know. And when you're ready for that neural synchrony facilitation session, contact me to schedule one. Have a terrific day, and just be aware of your intuition.